Hey YouTube, how you doing? It's your friendly neighborhood Dungeon Master, Zach Hall here, coming to you with a new video. This is not a live stream. I've decided to try to keep my live streams focused to my Pathfinder 2nd Edition series, but I want to start looking at some other RPG products besides Pathfinder. Some of them will be me learning new systems, kind of like how I started with the Expanse RPG from a company that I can't remember off the top of my head. Hang on, I'm looking at it. From Green Ronin Publishing. But this is actually, the product I'm going to be looking at in this video is actually my favorite RPG product of 2019, period. And it's the Fate Space Toolkit, as you can kind of see right here in front of me. But it's a very cool product that I've already gotten a chance to look through for as far as the rules go. So this isn't going to be like a first look in a traditional sense, but this is going to be my first look at its full 1.0 version. The Space Toolkit was actually released by its publisher Evil Hat earlier this year, maybe even at the very end of 2018, but I think it was at the beginning of 2019. As what they were calling a prototype edition. They put it up on their web store and on Drive-Thru RPG as a prototype where it had all the layouts, all of the rules were done and play tested and good to go. The only thing missing in it was art, and instead of the actual final art, like we're seeing here on the cover, they just had big kind of gray spots because the layout was already pretty much done. But as it turns out, art is a very expensive but key part of the role-playing game publishing process. But because it's expensive and Evil Hat is a smaller, they're not working with the budget necessarily of like a Wizards of the Coast or a Paizo is. They wanted to see what the interest would be like for a toolkit like their space, this space toolkit. They've done other toolkits for their Fate system before, mainly a foes, or what were the adversary toolkit and a horror toolkit, I believe. And they're great kind of additions or supplements to the already fantastic Fate system that Evil Hat created and published. It runs great IP like the Dresden Files role-playing game, and it's also the basis for just their general system agnostic Fate Core and Fate Accelerated edition, those game systems. I personally am a huge fan and proponent of the Fate system. I think it's a great narrative focused role-playing system when you want to do maybe the opposite of something you might do in a Pathfinder or a more crunchy system like that. So again, I love Fate. It's really, really great. And I literally just got the email within the last hour that Evil Hat has updated the Space Toolkit to have its full art kind of promoting it out of the prototype edition into a full product art layout, bing, bang, boom, done. So I just thought it would be fun to go through what I already love as a toolkit. I'm not going to go super in depth. If you would like me to go either in depth on a Fate Core or the Space Toolkit rules in general, just let me know in the comments and we can do that later. But already this is new, and so it's kind of telling us, hey, like, you want to do your Fate Core game, but you want to do it in space. Realistically, you could have done that and you still can do that with the Fate Core system. What the toolkit is great at is giving you a jumping off point, so that if you already kind of know what kind of game you want to run with the Fate Core and with Fate Space, it gives you a lot of rules that you can choose to opt into, which I think is great for both me as a game master, but also for the players. If we have solidified from the get-go the rules that we are going to be using. Obviously, in a narrative-based system like Fate, the GM is going to be responsible for a lot of the adjudication of rules anyway, but just being able to have the same starting off point is great. And what I love right here is probably my favorite part of the toolkit is their 5 ready-to-go campaign starter settings, showcasing all of the toolkit's tools in action. So the idea behind the toolkit is that it's obviously adding rules to the already existing Fate core rules. What Evil Hat has opted to go for here is to actually create 5 different settings, if you will, with each setting kind of giving you, the GM or player, whoever's reading the book, kind of idea of some popular series that maybe the setting is based on, so you can get a quick, at a glance, knowledge of what is the setting really going to look like, how realistic is it going to be. Are we going to go Expanse level of realistic? Are we going to go Star Trek level of realistic? Or are we going even past Star Trek into more fantasy Star Wars realistic? So it's really, really cool how they decided to set it up. And man, all this just looks really, really great. Ooh, this art's very cool. So obviously, I've kind of already talked about this. Get an introduction. Oh, cool. And so here's a list of games based on Fate that already kind of operate in space. And I can tell you that of these, I have only kind of looked at Tachyon Squadron. It's a book kind of based on a space fighter squadron. If you wanted to run like a Battlestar Galactica game focused on, a squad of fighters like Starbuck and the whole gang from either, but mainly the reboot of Battlestar Galactica, Tachyon Squadron would be a great place to start. The plausibilimeter, which obviously kind of telling you like how plausible is this game system. So going from high plausibility to low plausibility. It's kind of like Star Wars. It's kind of example of low plausibility, more great art. I see that they kind of opted into doing some black and white, which I think is fine. Like, if anything, printer friendly, which is great for folks like me that end up getting a lot of PDF versions and then don't necessarily have the money to go out and also get a hardback, but would like to have have the ability to print something for use at the table. The medium plausibility, and it lists kind of Star Trek as medium plausibility, which I think I would probably agree to. I mean, we could fight about science fiction plausibility all day. Okay, so here's the 5 settings that they have chosen to kind of use and create, and all of these have different, are on different levels of the plausibility meter. We have a post-human space opera at subliminal speeds. We have a gritty Cold War political intrigue in orbit for high stakes, a realistic space drama among the interplanetary working class, optimistic space exploration and alien encounter in a spirit of discovery, obviously Star Trek, and then Pax Galactica, transgalactic travelogue against a somewhat Baroque backdrop. I wonder what that might be based off of. I think I've already mentioned it in this video. So, GMs, you might want to adopt a setting whole cloth, altering it as needed to suit your playgroup, or you might just want to dip into the book to steal specific ideas and approaches as desired. And yeah, you can do either or like a mix of both. I really like the mass drivers, but I want to drop the specific rules. It's kind of the nice thing about a toolkit like this is that it makes it kind of easy to do both. Creating, so we obviously need to kind of come up with what subgenre. Science fiction's a big place. Kind of inspiration. I'm the type of content nerd that getting me a place to start, or giving my players a place to start of like, this game is going to be X plus Y with a little bit of Z thrown in. I think it's a great place to start. Star Wars, Star Trek, Battlestar Galactica, or Firefly, Expanse, or Ancillary Justice. Yeah, great. Like, because obviously some of us want to be able to play inside of those IPs. I said in my Expanse video, I desperately want to either run or play in an Expanse RPG. And whether or not it is in Green Ronin's Expanse RPG pre-made system using their age dice system, or whether it's inside of the Expanse setting using the Fate system, I don't really know if I care. Kind of had this conversation in my Expanse RPG video of like, my initial idea when to run Expanse was to just use the rules I found here in the Space Toolkit. I believe it's the Mass Drivers setting, is specifically based off of the Expanse and gives some really cool mechanical crunch to a narratively driven system like Fate that brings the plausibility meter and the realistic meter up from what I think is a standard Fate game into something that matches the content you are trying to imitate, like the Expanse. You have connections. Fate is based on relationships and connections, so you want to, do those during character creation. We have already kind of talked about plausibility. The focus. Do we want to be about piracy or diplomacy or trade or exploration or combat? A mix of some of those. Those are in general, regardless of what kind of game system you're running. Try to ask either if you're the type of GM who kind of runs with more strangers more than friends, make a decision and publicize what you're wanting to do and only allow players that are kind of on board with that. Or if you're playing with friends and you, the GM or DM, don't really care, check in with them to see kind of what everybody wants to do so that you can make informed decisions about your game creation. Characters, and then aliens. How aliens are aliens. How alien-y are aliens. So we're going to define the setting, a pitch, almost like creating a TV show. What's the pitch? What are the scope? What are the issues and aspects at play, and who's going to be there and where are they going to be? Honestly, you could do that for any kind of genre. I'm going to focus on the mass drivers. It might be interesting to throw this video in with my Expanse playlist and series to kind of, maybe we can discuss pros and cons or just preferences between the age system and the Fate system. So let's check out the pitch for mass drivers. 23rd century space freighters living hand to mouth in the asteroid belt, trying to keep body and soul and ship and crew together, avoiding the squeeze by the big corporations as much as they can. I mean, that's basically probably from a different point of view, but is essentially what that's essentially Expanse. Scope, tone, period, and extent. Always good to know, like, epic or personal. See, and I tend to run epic games. Like, I kind of want the players to go from nameless, faceless people in the crowd to well-known, like have a some sense of notoriety in either a locale or in the global sense of the scope of the game. But you have to make that decision because your players might not be in for that kind of epic adventure. And if you thrust your players into an epic situation and they weren't really prepared for it, you're going to run into kind of a sense of goal misalignment. Period. I would probably call The Expanse probably lives somewhere between near future and far future. It's 23rd century, so it's only a couple hundred years. So yeah, I guess it is kind of near future, even though it seems like 200 years is a long time. But for an example, some aspects that we would have for the Expanse game is flooded coastal regions worldwide, enormous spaceward migration, and wealthy megacorporate oligarchs. All that would be pretty true for an Expanse. Yeah, all of that would be accurate for an Expanse game. Far future, alternate history would be a blast. And then retro future, something I just don't really have a whole lot of experience with, but I am sure. Oh, like if you did a science fiction steampunk game, that would kind of be a retro future alternate history mix. Extent. So for an Expanse game, it would be interplanetary, but no faster than light travel. So the extent would kind of be entire solar system. No spoilers. All that's kind of, and then some of this is just general creating a Fate core game. That I'll kind of skip over, kind of look through. So it looks like they've opted into all black and white art, which again, I have no problem with. I think it's great just to have the art in general. I don't think it's incredibly necessary to have this fully rendered or colored out stuff, or even this very simple, almost line art. Like, because of the type of game or the types of games that this toolkit covers, I think it's great. Like, this gives off a certain vibe that potentially matches the game that you're running. Like, it looks like this whole back area is made up of some kind of like maybe reptilian or avian alien with a couple of obvious humans or humanoids in front. So like, very, very cool. Ooh, and it's a 2-piece. Love, that alien looks funky. Like one central eye. This wheelchair looks really, really interesting and cool. But yeah, it looks like 4 humanoids kind of arguing in front of some kind of alien audience. Interesting. Another really cool art. Ooh, we have maybe some body mod here of either this whole person is an android or maybe they just have a external arm. Then obviously the big one, if you're familiar with Fate Core, not knowing who the audience for this video might be, if you're familiar with Fate Core, we have skills, and that's really how most of our roles, all of our roles are attached to a skill, almost like a skill check. And Fate Core, just the Fate Core rulebook in general gives some really good guidelines on swapping out skills, removing skills entirely, adding new ones. A big portion of this book, or not a big portion, but a very key part of this toolkit is some ideas on how to modify the default skill list to match the science fiction setting. Really cool art. I like that a lot. A little more rendered out. Some really cool shading. Ooh, I love this kind of like flash from the muzzle. can't be science fiction unless you have some kind of like interactive holographic some kind of setting or like computer system. Here we got some psionics here. Can't really tell. But this is happening on Earth, which is cool. Oh yeah, here's kind of psionics. Then stunts is the kind of big, kind of you're inside of a skill. Characters that are specifically good at certain skills can have stunts, which allow them to essentially just break the rules of the game. So they could use athletics for a role that would normally be, I don't know, fight or something like that. Usually at the cost of a fate point, which is a resource that players and the GM have and trade in order to affect the story, create plot points, and be able to activate some stunts. Ooh, alien gun merchant. Very cool. Looks like we might have maybe like an invisibility, almost like a stealth field enhancer from Star Wars. Right, so extras in Fate Core, extras are kind of like things that, really anything that isn't on a specific character sheet. One of the kind of golden rules, maybe not the golden rule, maybe it's called the bronze rule, actually, in Fate, is that everything can be a character in the sense of, if you wanted to create a spaceship, you could create that as its own character and use the same skills and everything from a character sheet that would apply to a spaceship and just put it as a character sheet that either the party or the GM controls. Extras are things that are too small to be put on a character sheet, but add things like potentially bonuses to roles. So things like tools and stuff like that would kind of make sense, like a limited use thing. Do you have tech levels? Go from 0 to 6, with conventional being standard tech for the setting. Cool. And represents a difficulty, probably in terms of like crafting or having knowledge of. Tool classes, armor, communicators, firearms, hand weapons, mobility, power sources, sensor spacesuits. Very cool. So I have all this kind of, in the narrative sense of Fate Core, we have this extra crunch, which is really, really cool. So we have like a cold fusion cell. You can use it as long as you have access to it. Doesn't cost anything. Refresh of 2, which means it has its own fate points. Like at the start of every session, it starts with 2 of its own fate points. Then you can spend those fate points to invoke aspects related to channeling power to connected technological artifacts. Power output can be manipulated with lore, creating advantages such as more power. And then like near future EVA suits, so like EVA suits that we would see in something like The Expanse. Extended spacewalks protects against threats related to exposure to vacuum with a good duration of several hours. Fair mobility and 0 gravity with its built-in thrusters. Only has an average +1 communicator, a voice-only link with a controller back in the ship. Great. That's awesome. So if I wanted to, if the GM had me roll a lore, or like I would probably create a, honestly, I wouldn't have someone roll because it, but let's say there's interference, and you need to, the GM is making you roll, to establish communications with the ship, you would only be able to add a +1 with the EVA suit extra because it only has an average communicator. But if you leveled up or you spent some of your money to be able to outfit your EVA suits with a higher tech communicator that could go from an average to a fair or even a good communicator, which goes from +2, +3. Gives you some sense of how you might be interested in creating alien abilities. Even some based on like Wellesian stuff, psychic powers. So one of my favorite things in this toolkit is the spacecraft and space travel. Some of it might not be of use to you if you're doing a low plausibility setting like Star Wars. You just go. And it can be a narrative point that maybe the hyperdrive was damaged, but generally it's an on or off state. Not a lot happens inside of hyperspace. You hand wave the actual technology that it requires to do that faster than light travel. Gives you the character's moment of respite to rest, role play before arriving at their destination. Then if you go all the way to the opposite of high plausibility, like they specifically call out Martian or The Expanse, where there is no faster than light travel, traveling between Earth and Mars might take several weeks. It's done at some level of G. I think in the Expanse books, standard speed is all their speeds are measured in G's, like how much gravitational force is put on an individual or objects inside the ship when it's traveling at that speed. I think Expanse is measured in standard speeds 0.3 G's. So we've got different ways to handle maps. You could have a node map with established paths between places. Have a zone map where you just kind of move from zone to zone, or an open map where you can go wherever you want to go. I think I've decided for Expanse if it would be a node map or an open map. It would most likely be node. Let's see if it calls out in mass drivers, which is the Expanse type setting, that it's a node map, because they're really, for the most part, you are only going to certain pre-allocated places. Gives you some kind of engine types for if you wanted to introduce a little more crunch into your space travel. You get to kind of decide, how much maneuvering is available to ships, how fast are they going. And then gives you kind of like a table of how long it might take you to do certain things. Oh, interesting. It will even give you light years if you're, doing C, like, some type of like measurement of light speed. And then a section of faster than light travel. And then an example. Oh, I wonder what this art was based on. Looks kind of similar to something we all know. Ooh, even got some wormholes, like Deep Space Nine. So here's an example of a type of map. You can decide how you want to do travel. Life in space. This is obviously something that is sometimes just hand-waved over, but in a high plausibility setting like the Expanse is obviously a huge deal. there's a, I think I was rewatching The Expanse leading up to the new season that comes out in a few weeks, and my wife made the point, was like, why is that ship going the wrong way? Like, based on where they're trying to go, like the rear of the ship with like the engine was facing towards the thing that the ship was trying to get to. And I was like, well, they accelerate to the halfway point and then they rotate around and begin decelerating so that they don't actually change speed, but they come to a rest near the actual object they're trying to get to, which is a huge part of The Expanse and those stories. So it looks like they kind of suggest that for our mass driver setting, that access to the ship is an extra, that players invest some of their character resources into a ship, making it part of a specific character. And any separation of character from the ship is temporary. This method emphasizes the character's relationship with a specific ship as part of their identity. So I think I would probably... I think that probably makes sense, though it would be for me, it would be a pretty statted out extra. Like, I would probably take it another step farther, depending on the game. If my players all wanted to just be a adventuring party on a specific planet, like if they wanted to live in an Expanse type setting on Earth and deal with things that's happening on Earth, well then obviously a ship isn't necessary. And if they run into one, we create one, but it's, maybe not necessarily theirs. Where if we were mimicking the actual story of The Expanse, where the ship is a integral part of the story and the players themselves, but not necessarily a specific player, but the players themselves, it would probably not cost any actual character resources because it would be a part of the story, and I would actually create as much of a character sheet for it as made sense. We actually have a section on statting spaceships, so you can create skills, whether ship skills replace character skills, or if ship skills modify character skills, or if character skills modify ship skills. I don't know if I have a preference there. We just kind of have to choose one and see what works. And then you also have character skills determine success, ship skills determine effect. That would be interesting. Of like, this is kind of dependent on the system, but I like that a lot. As stunts with refresh, I wouldn't do that, mainly because that would, maybe could work. All of it could work. So space combat, it was really cool. I'm interested in maybe comparing this to what they do in Tachyon Squadron. Tachyon Squadron's one of the most suggested books to get if you're wanting to run a sci-fi game, or even just any kind of aerial combat because of its space combat system. But I wonder if Fate, if Evil Hat paid for the rights to be able to move that rule system into the space toolkit, or if they came up with kind of their own version. Low fuel. Yeah, so all this looks, that's really cool. Love how the metal is bent and very cool. I think you could probably decide however crunchy you want to get. Yeah, very cool. example of space combat. Again, I don't want to get too heavy into the actual specifics and the mechanics of this. Not really my intention. Just the fact that it's there for a system like Fate, the fact that they just give you an example, I think, is a great jumping off point for most people. And then at the table, a lot of the times you end up deciding how you want to handle it. And this video is already a certain kind of, over 30 minutes. Aliens and alien rules. I'm going to kind of skip over this, though I know it's probably important to a lot of people. It's not super important to me at the moment. But you get a table for, if you want to randomly create what type of world might be there for habitable worlds and just world types. Planetary culture, trade and commerce. Got a table for creating low plausibility aliens. Some medium plausibility, probably don't really, romantically designed. Like, it doesn't really matter because you're just kind of hand waving the specifics up. But we do have a table for high plausibility aliens. And an example. And then here is like our general, the settings. So let's skip ahead to the, you can get an idea of how these look like by us looking at the mass drivers. Specifically inspired by The Expanse, which makes it really easy for people like me in my specific test case. All about being human in space and what it takes to stay that way. So the tone is low stakes and personal. Characters are motivated by economic necessity to eke out a living on the margins in a player's society. And obviously, that personal scope can jump to epic scope. If you've read or seen The Expanse, you know how easily that can be done. Plausibility is medium to high, and then you can play anywhere between Firefly and The Expanse. And that's true. Like, you can choose to do some things crunchier than others, which is one of the great parts of the Toolkit and of Fate in general. Near future, with a direct line to the present, is mostly the solar system. Big issues of the setting is life on the edge. Everybody's kind of living on the edge of the next catastrophe. Earth is living on the next, Earth and Mars are living on the edge of a potential war. Earth's living on the edge of, potential famine from overpopulation, of rebellion of the people on planet who might get fed up with the UN's control. Mars is living on the edge of terraforming and the edge of vacuum, literally, even though they've been there for a couple hundred years, it's a couple generations, they're still living on an inhospitable planet. And then you have the Belters, people that live out in space, on space stations, on moons, on the asteroid belt. Those are all very difficult ways of life. The setting aspects, the tides of space, everything is moving. Gravity wells also suck down capital. That's true. All the money is on Earth, Mars, and bigger asteroids like Ceres. Technology aspects, nuclear, thermal, rocketry. At some level, you have to hand wave the science, the actual transportation stuff. So there is no faster than light travel in The Expanse, but there is high efficiency fuel that they do just kind of have to hand wave. So you have faces and places. This is what I love about Fate, is just with a couple sentences and these all caps aspects, you know exactly kind of what we're talking about. So let's look at the Rongo Spaceport. This is a bustling space transit complex in the center of Rongo Crater along the equator of Ceres, with extensive ship repair and maintenance facilities, as well as shipping company offices and storage facilities. Lots of stuff could go down there at the Rongo Spaceport. And then here's our map. And I think these lines show 100 kilometers or 100,000 kilometers. So you just kind of have to decide how long it would take you to get from point A to point B. They've got a glossary of like slang that you could use, which is great. Great way of immediately getting into character. So the concept of the setting is that you are on some kind of ship, so you have to decide if you're traditional naval hierarchy with a captain in charge, a democracy, or a technocratic anarchy. Creating characters. Then we have the Clockwork Orange rule. Each PC should have at least one aspect that includes 23rd century slang or other terms from the Massdriver's lexicon. Or you can invent new slang terms that are conceivable derivations or corruptions of non-English loanwords. That's a great and easy way to get a character into a setting. Love it. We have the phase trio, which you can look up on the Fate SRD if you're interested, but it's a great way of creating characters and creating characters with relationships to each other, and already have kind of some semblance of a backstory. Which is honestly, you could take the phase trio out of Fate and do it for any game. Let's so can't start with alien skills or artifacts. Characters in a hierarchical crew may obtain rank as an extra, representing a space merchant marine rank with some legal standing, but not the full authority of naval rank, and there are no psychic powers. We have a new skill called black belting, which I believe is what this is called, like how you, like those who live out in the space, black belters. And then you can build ships with module points. So like you can decide what kind of modules you want to add, how much mass they add, and what they cost. It's very cool. And then I'm assuming they each let you do something. So command module provides ship stunts. Drone bay lets you attack and create advantage at fare. Fuel tank gives you 2 additional stress boxes for fuel. Heat sink provides a stress box. And then you can decide what kind of drive based on, do you want impulse or thrust, vice versa. Very cool. Ways to deal with heat, traveling on the space map. Oh, that's cool. Does give you some kind of random tables if you're going to some place kind of out of the way. Gives you some ideas for downtime. It's very cool. Awesome. Millennials does look very Star Trek-y. Cool. Yeah, so it looks like they went with some pretty simple black and white art for everything. Which I think for something like this, Toolkit is great. Super great. Oh, this is cool. Resources are going to help you come up with ideas for characters and settings, as well as mine for details about alien spaceships and extra categories. These works by plausibility that we think it's helpful for. Very cool. I mean, you've obviously got the first book of The Expanse listed right there, but you've also got Kim Robinson's Red Mars. You've got a book about the economics of Star Trek, a book by Stanley Schmidt on A Writer's Guide to Creating Extraterrestrial and Alien Life Forms, Writer's Guide to Space Travel. Very cool. Yeah, that's it. So, let me double check and see if any of this is added to the Fate SRD. First off, you just, if you like Fate system or are interested in running a kind of narrative game, you should pick it up. Pick up Fate Core and the Fate Space Toolkit. Don't think this was added to the Fate SRD. but the Fate core system is all on SRD, which you can check out online if you just look up the Fate space. Well, they accidentally didn't take off Prototype Edition off of the title and the copyright. Oops. Anywho, that was the Fate Space Toolkit from Evil Hat Productions, a supplement to the amazing Fate core system for running any type of game out in space, but really about space or science fiction games. I am a huge fan, would love to run a game really, really soon using the rules in the Space Toolkit, specifically an Expanse game. And I think it's a great addition to I think Fate Core is a great addition to any GM or player's repertoire. I think it's a great system to run, but I also think just once I learned and started playing using the Fate system, it made my D&D 5th edition games better because of the learning a different system just opens up the box of what is possible in a tabletop pen and paper role-playing game, and adding in different settings and different systems in the same way that learning about Pathfinder has made me learn about more D20 systems and seeing what is possible, and is affecting my D&D 5th edition games. Fate does the same, and vice versa. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like and maybe a comment telling me about your favorite part. I will put a link to the Space Toolkit in the description to this video below. So thank you for watching. If you liked this content, why not hit subscribe and become aware when I'm doing more. The main part of this channel is me going through and doing a first look for the Pathfinder 2nd edition core rulebook. I've done almost half of the book so far, and I've got a playlist of all those videos up on my channel homepage. You can just go to youtube.com/ZachHall to see more. You can also hit me up on Twitter @ZachHall_, where you can find me talking about all kinds of things, but you can also ask questions there. And maybe if we get enough questions put together, I can either answer them on a next video, or we can put together a mailbag video in the future. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.